apparently there was an anti-Semitic act at a New York high school, an affluent New York high school, that was so outrageous that a member of Congress actually did something about it. Congressman George Latimer, who AIPAC helped throw out Jamal Bowman, is calling for investigations. He's very upset. Now, before we get to the details, Cenk, your 2 cents.
So George Latimer is a mutant dog who works for Israel. You're going to be stunned at the amount of money the Israeli lobby gave him. And the other thing you're going to be stunned at is his lack of any morality, not 1%. Because Anna's going to show you what he's outraged about and what he's not outraged about. Go ahead, Anna.
So of the anti-Semitic act, he doesn't share details about it at all. He just posts a lengthy statement on X saying that he's deeply disturbed by the reports of anti-Semitic incidents. There was one incident. Anti-Semitic incidents at Scarsdale High School.
Scarsdale High School, okay, yeah, go ahead, tell us Pretty Little Lies.
These reports demand a thorough investigation, and every individual responsible must be held fully accountable. At a time when the Jewish community is facing heightened threats and hostility, students deserve to feel safe in their schools. Maybe you guys should stop equating Israel with the entire Jewish population. Maybe that would be a really, really good idea, but they intentionally conflate the two over and over again, so critics of Israel get smeared as anti-Semites. There's a price to pay for that, meaning that innocent Jewish people end up getting lumped in with genocidal maniacs. And I think that's kind of unfair to them, isn't it?
But anyway, very unfair to them.
So what happened? The disturbing situation, according to the New York Post, occurred when flyers posted by the posh public high school's Israel Culture Club to promote an upcoming Israel Fest were ripped off the walls and dumped into boys' bathroom urinals, with images of the vandalism quickly making the rounds online. So here's the image.
Paper got hurt, and I didn't know it was that bad. Look at the paper. Oh, the horrors of what happened to that paper.
Terrible, terrible.
Oh my God.
Now, I've done extensive research on this to ensure that no one's been harmed physically by this. No one has been harmed physically. The flyers, though, that's a different story, and maybe we should have a moment of silence for it.
Yes, thoughts and prayers for the papers.
Yes.
I didn't know it was as serious as flyers because there's 72,000 dead people in Palestine, and I thought probably equivalent.
Right.
But no, much more important, it was a piece of paper that had the name Israel on it. Oh my God.
The boys were peeing on it. Okay.
They're slaughtering the Lebanese as we speak. They just destroyed 3 Christian towns. They're killing everyone in their path.
I know, but they're not Israelis or Jews.
Oh, I didn't know they're not the Übermensch.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, the Übermensch were gravely insulted. Go ahead, let's go back to a national emergency that a US congressperson is animated about.
Wants a thorough investigation, full accountability. Okay, now American lawmakers aren't just melting down over high school students desecrating flyers. They're also busy funding and defending the depravity of the Israeli Defense Forces. And there's never any statement about that. There's never any calls for investigations when it comes to the very real war crimes that are carried out by the foreign military that we are forced to bankroll as American citizens. Recently, Haaretz put out a pretty horrifying report that relied on the testimony of IDF soldiers whose crimes against humanity have been so severe that they're having trouble living with themselves. Now, I am already at a point where my heart has grown so cold for the Israelis that I feel no sympathy for them at all. But I will at least acknowledge that there are sociopathic IDF soldiers who never feel any shame at all. Hopefully none of them are dual citizens and come back here to the United States. They should be barred entry, they're dangerous individuals. But some IDF soldiers apparently still have a bit of a conscience and feel a little bit bad about raping and murdering innocent people and civilians in Gaza. And Haaretz highlights their statements. Now, they go by aliases in this, but let's start off with one IDF reservist who goes by the alias Maya. She says that during the war, I was exposed to the killing of innocent people, shocking things that if I had read about them in Haaretz, I would have cried out. But in reserve duty, they went by me as if they were nothing. She describes what happened at an army outpost in southern Gaza. I was sitting there in the command room. Suddenly, the soldiers on watch noticed 5 Palestinians crossing the line they weren't allowed to cross, heading for northern Gaza. Everyone went crazy. There was a big mess, meaning they opened fire and just started slaughtering these people, okay? The battalion commander gave an order to overwhelm them with fire, even though they hadn't been confirmed as armed or anything like that. A tank started shooting at them with its machine gun, hundreds of bullets. She says that 4 out of the 5 ended up getting killed. It's actually shocking that one of them survived, but the story gets worse if you can believe it. A few hours later, a D9 Caterpillar armored bulldozer buried them in the sand. When I asked why, they said that it was so the dogs wouldn't eat them and spread disease. The one who survived was put in a cage at the outpost, and they said we had to wait for a Shin Bet man to interrogate him. Well, no one showed up that day, but the next day someone did. Suddenly, a few soldiers called me, so I went with them to the cage. The Palestinian man sat there cuffed and blindfolded and seemed to be freezing from the cold. One of the soldiers took out his penis and started urinating on him. He told him, "This is for Beri, you a-hole. This is for Nova." Nobody could stop laughing. I might have laughed too. A day later, someone from Shin Bet met with him, interrogated him for 10 minutes, and determined that it was just some guy, ordinary civilian, who was trying to go back home to northern Gaza. Another IDF soldier who goes by Yehuda, Yehuda, let me just get through this, told Haaretz that one night a Palestinian managed to get near their outpost. We got to the Palestinian and he immediately held up his hands. It was obvious he was unarmed. The officer came near him, waited a few seconds, and just fired without asking questions, without the suspect doing anything. And then there's stories of torture. Etan, another alias, but an IDF soldier, talks about the interrogation of one suspected Hamas militant. He says that at one point the interrogator took off the prisoner's pants and underwear. He took a couple of cable ties and attached one to his penis and one to his balls. He asked him a question, and when he didn't answer, he pulled the cable ties tighter. They repeated it over and over. There was crazy yelling. He never stopped yelling, as if his soul was leaving his body. And let's not forget this. Many of us have seen the video of IDF soldiers in that prison gang raping a Palestinian hostage. Well, it turns out IDF chief reinstates reservists accused of raping, not abusing, raping Palestinian detainee despite ongoing probe. This is what Israeli society is. This is what we are funding. This is what our government defends. I haven't heard a word from Latimer about the depravity that is exposed about the Israelis day in and day out. But to be fair to Latimer, someone tore down a flyer and put it in the urinal. And that was enough for him to spend minutes of his day to post about it.
Okay, I have 2 more horrors I'm gonna share with you. But first, on the ones that Anna mentioned, the one where there was just the officer goes up to the Palestinian and just murders him. Later, they had a discussion about it, they said at headquarters, and they decided it was murder, and then no one did anything about it, and he just went back to work.
That's right.
Because murder is perfectly normal of civilians in the IDF, because they're all terrorists. So now, the second one, another one that was mentioned in the Haaretz story, is they go and there's a melee again. They don't know who they're shooting at. They shoot at a bunch of people, and then they go and look at them, and it turns out they were all civilians, a bunch of kids mainly, and a grandfather, right? So the person that's talking to Haaretz is now traumatized over it. So an officer comes and they're wondering, oh my God, what's the officer gonna do? We accidentally, they think, killed all these civilians, these kids and this grandfather. And the officer comes by and spits on him, on the dead civilians. And so all of the commanders are setting the example. You murder, you abuse, you torture, you rape, you spit, you urinate on them. And so that's why it's such a perfect connection to the Latimer story. Because he sounds like he wants a national investigation over someone urinating on a piece of paper. But when they're urinating on innocent civilians, on human beings, he's like, that's no big deal. And by the way, he's not alone. Almost no one in Congress thinks that's a big deal. That's the same Congress that just sent them 1,000-pound bombs and armed bulldozers. So our Congress with our money is saying, attaboy, way to torture them. Way to be Nazis. This is what Nazis do. If you're not convinced yet, I have two more. But before I tell you that, why would guys like George Latimer, who just like care so deeply emotionally about a piece of paper with the word Israel on it, but not care at all about the torture and rape that Israel is doing?
Let's put up graphic 4, you'll find out.
Yeah, you'll find out right here. Oh, how much is the Israeli lobby giving Latimer? $22 million. $673,131.
But did he have to do that with his mouth, considering his eyes look like that?
Yeah, no, and so why did they give him so much money? Because he was running against Jamal Bowman, and Jamal Bowman had the temerity to question our funding of Israel. And if anyone questions Israel 1%, the Gestapo shows up. That's the pro-Israel donors. And they say, we're going to ruin your career. We're going to end your career. They do it to everyone in media. They do it to everyone in politics because they're fascists. And so what did they do? They said, okay, we've got to give $22 million to a mutant. And why do they pick a mutant, by the way? Because they need the least moral people in the country to to steal our money to fund a genocide. So Latimer's like, oh, I'll do it. And I'll pretend like you guys being offended about paper is like the most important thing. If you want, we'll do congressional investigation to stomp out peace protesters in college campuses. We'll destroy the people who want peace on behalf of beloved Israel. It's like if you give them $22 million, and everyone in our media is like, oh, $22 million don't affect politicians. He's not bought by Israel. It's offensive to say he's bought by Israel. Good, I want to offend you. Last two things.
He's Israel's whore. What do we? Come on.
I mean, this is absurd.
Be offended. Be offended. I don't care.
Okay, graphic 14. This is another detainee, Palestinian testimonies. I wish for death. Sexual violence in Israel's prisons is an organized state policy. Palestinian testimonies reveal how sexual violence, including rape using objects and dogs, is approved by the highest levels of Israeli leadership. Now, before I read you the specifics of these stories, remember how much people on television was like, do we think there might have been sexual assault on October 7th? Because like that person's pants were in that direction and there was blood there. And we think, so that's it, the rapist, right?
Hold on.
Now, are they saying the same thing about proved things, Israelis and Palestinians with testimony saying the things I'm about to read you about vicious rape about Israel? No, shh. Never report the news about Israel because they're objective. Go ahead, Anna.
No, I was gonna say, look, is it possible that there were instances of rape on October 7th? I'm not gonna deny that. However, the point that the Israelis keep trying to make is that rape is used, like systemic rape, it's part of the sexual torture that Hamas has agreed to implement as part of their warfare against the Israelis. There is no evidence indicating that there's widespread rape, but there is evidence indicating there's widespread rape and sexual abuse carried out by the IDF.
There is absolutely no question that our media does not care about the truth or the news at all. Because if they care, or rape, they're giant liars. If they cared about rape, they would report on the systemic rape happening inside Israeli prisons. But they absolutely positively will never, ever, ever report on that because they're not doing news, they're doing propaganda. And for a different government, which is unbelievable. So here are some of, if I read you all of it, guys, you couldn't sleep at night. So Catherine Hurst from Middle East Eye reports, one former detainee, a 42-year-old woman from North Gaza who was held in the notorious Sid Tayman detention center, said she was bound naked to a metal table and repeatedly raped by 2 masked soldiers over the course of 2 days. She recalled that she was left shackled, naked, and bleeding throughout the night before the soldiers returned the next day to continue raping her.
You gotta read the next one.
That's not a maybe. That's not a maybe. And this is one of dozens of examples. And yet our media absolutely positively will not report on it. Why? Isn't that super weird? When it comes to Muslims, they're like terrorists, rapists, right? With some evidence that it might have happened. And I'm with Anna. If you say it happened, I got no reason to protect Hamas. I got no reason to be in favor of any of violence. We're totally against war. We're totally against any innocent civilians being hurt. Okay, but if you care so much, then why don't you care about this? Because the reality is people like Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, and to be fair to them, literally everyone on cable news, they don't think Muslim lives are that important. They don't think a Palestinian woman being raped or a Palestinian man being raped is important at all. Because they don't view them as fully human. They believe their own propaganda that Muslims are terrorists who have every vicious thing coming to them. They're the most racist, bigoted people in the whole country. All right, last one. Amir, a 35-year-old Palestinian man, also held at Timon, recounted how soldiers forced him to strip naked before their dogs urinated on him and raped him. He described how the dog penetrated my anus in a trained manner while I was being beaten. And he said it continued for several minutes. I felt profoundly humiliated and violated, of course. And that story is not alone. I've now read half a dozen stories of the Israelis using dogs to rape human beings. These are the sick terrorists that they are stealing our money to fund.
But there was a flyer in a urinal in New York.
In Scarsdale. I'm so broken up about it.
I hope the kids are all right.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.